excited to talk to you about today's recipe. It is from Claire Saffitz, Dessert Person, and it's the chocolate hazelnut galette de Rois. It's king cake, guys. So I went to Tulane for undergrad. King cake to me in New Orleans means something completely different. So when I translated this and realized that this is the original type of king cake, I was really surprised just because it's very different than how I've experienced it. But this was a phenomenal recipe, and I really made it sort of on a whim because I had just made puff pastry for my apple tart. I was like, okay, I can do this now. I have more confidence in it. And it's my boyfriend's birthday coming up. I thought he might love this. Let me give it a test run. I am so glad that I did. This is definitely going to become a staple for me. The crispy puff pastry, it's basically homemade Nutella inside, which was phenomenal. I've never made a Frangipane before, which I've always seen on the Great British Baking Show. So this was a 10 out of 10 for me. I hope you guys enjoy watching along. I made a couple of mistakes, as one does, but it turned out great. I mean, so good. This was not the prettiest bake I've ever made, but I think it might be the most delicious. It's just, I feel like you really can't beat puff pastry and Nutella. So I hope you guys enjoy. Okay guys, so to kick off this recipe, I already made rough puff pastry. You can go check out my video about how to do that. Other than that, it's a pretty simple recipe actually. So I have my rough puff in the fridge. It's been there for 2 days, I guess. It keeps for 2 or 3 days. Sorry, that was Atticus. Okay. Anyway, so basically this is just 2 pieces of puff pastry with Frangipane in the middle. Frangipane is a really commonly used fill. Atticus, come here. Come here. All right, look how festive. Look how festive. It's a napkin holder, but it looks so cute. So, Frangipane is usually made with almonds, but for this particular variation, we're gonna do hazelnuts. So I need to blanch some hazelnuts. And then it's basically eggs, butter, hazelnuts. We're gonna blend in some chocolate, vanilla extract, just good stuff. And then on the bottom, so basically we're just gonna blend all of that together. And on the bottom layer of puff pastry, I'm gonna do a quick little layer of Nutella. And then on top of that, I'm gonna put my Frangipane in a piping bag and just pipe circles around. After that, you just put the other piece of puff pastry on top, seal it with some egg wash, and that's pretty much it. Then you bake it. So it's just 2 pieces of flaky pastry with like a Nutella mix in the middle. So nothing really wrong with that. So I'm gonna first make the Frangipane, and then after that, I'll show you rolling out the puff pastry, piping it, and baking. Okay, so I highly recommend getting blanched hazelnuts, even blanched and roasted, because I had to go through this whole process. So boil some water, you put some baking soda in it, and then you're gonna put in your raw hazelnuts. And you do this for a couple minutes until you start to be able to peel the skin off really easily. So you just take it straight from the boiling water into the cold water. And that's basically how you blanch any nut. This just took a long time. I had to blanch it and then peel all of them and then dry them, and then they were ready to roast. So highly recommend buying blanched hazelnuts. I just couldn't find any. And then blanched and roasted would be even better because you just can cut out that whole step. All right, so now my hazelnuts are blanched. Here they are. And so I'm gonna toast them at 350 in the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. I want to be careful that they don't burn, but I want them to be fragrant and a little bit crispy on the outside. You're gonna mix your roasted hazelnuts in with some sugar and salt in a food processor, and you're gonna pulse that until you have a fine powder. At this point, you're also supposed to add your chocolate, which I forgot to do, which we will talk about. But here I am, I'm adding my butter in 2 different stages, and then I realized that I was supposed to chop the chocolate. Hoping this will not come along, but then again I wouldn't have known. wasn't until here where I realized I had forgotten the chocolate, so I just really finely chopped it so that the food processor sort of already had some of its work done for it. So I made it really tiny shavings, and then I added that into the food processor and just continued pulsing until I got a smooth mixture.
How to keep on trying. It shows something's changing in me. It shows.
Frangipane isn't really smooth, but this is the texture that you want to have in the end.
Way to go.
Alright guys, so it is day 3 of this. You could probably do this recipe in one day, I just haven't had the time, especially if you make the rough puff in advance. So I'm gonna take the rough puff out of the fridge, separate it into 2, and let it sit at room temp for a little bit. Basically, then all we're gonna do is cut 2 10-inch diameter circles. I have my springform pan, which is 10 inches, so this is perfect. So I'm just gonna cut 1 circle out of each piece of rough puff, and then you basically just fill it with the Frangipane and bake. So super simple, it really shouldn't take that long.
Everything's not making sense. The worries I've been stuck with in bed, turning into fire.
So from 1/2 of your puff pastry, you're going to cut a 10-inch round, which I'm doing here. And for the second one, you want to get it to the same thickness, but you want it to be over 10 inches, which you'll see I actually cut 2 10-inch rounds, which is gonna come back to bite me later.
Mine after all. Daylight, I think I understand now why I was so faithful. You left my dreams, told me while I was sleeping.
Once your Nutella's down, you're going to want to fill a piping bag. I always do it by just putting it inside a cup here. And then you're going to add your Frangipane, which then we're going to pipe in concentric circles over the Nutella.
Tell us, baby, got this. Now, baby, got this. 'Cause when with you, everything's not making sense. The worries I've been stuck with in bed, and turn me into fire and flames. And maybe I was standing lost, hoping that I come along. But then again, I wouldn't have known.
Now you're going to add an egg wash, which will sort of act as the glue. And here you'll see, I knew it was weird that she asked for 2 10-inch rounds, which she didn't, because it domes, so I kind of had to stretch the top. It ended up being fine, but I was definitely thinking this can't be right. But I just crimped it along the edges. And then you're going to add more egg on top, and then sugar and hazelnuts.
So why can't we just give it a go?
Okay, what's wrong with this picture? Me forgetting to cut vents in the top, which is going to help it release heat and not split on the sides or leak butter. So that was a miss on my part, but it still ended up having beautiful layers and it didn't ooze out the sides. So it was fine. It was just, it definitely got overheated in the oven.
I've been stuck with in bed, and turn me into fire and flame. And maybe I was a little lost, hoping that, but then again I wouldn't have known.
Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed that. As I said at the beginning, I would give this recipe a 10 out of 10. Truly loved it. Will be making it again. The mistakes I made, as I mentioned, were I read the recipe as 2 10-inch circles, and in my mind I thought that's weird because the Frangipane is going to make it dome, so it's going to be hard to connect them. And then I reread after, and obviously it says a little more than 10 inches. So that was my fault. It all turned out okay. And then the reason I was making a lot of hypotheses about why the butter was melting out. I was like, I left the puff pastry in the fridge for 3 days. But then that night I took the scraps that you saw me cut off in this video, I rolled them in cinnamon and sugar and just baked them as little like puff pastry cinnamon things, cinnamon twists, and it didn't leak butter. And I thought, this is so weird, because it did today. And then I realized I did not cut the vents on the top of the galette. So it just heated up too much. There wasn't anywhere for the steam to release. The Frangipane was melting. There was nowhere for it to go because I'd crimped it. So I'm surprised, honestly, that it didn't burst out the sides, especially considering that I had just crimped it with 2 10-inch pieces instead of the over 10 inches, all that. Anyway, so the melting butter, as you saw, like there was a bit of texture. It got a bit soggy. But when it dried, when it cooled totally, you really can't taste it, guys. It's phenomenal. So next time, definitely gonna make sure I cut those vents. I was just so proud of how it looked. I was like, this looks so good, but I forgot to cut them. So next time, definitely gonna do that. Highly recommend vents. But this was a great recipe. I would not make it all the time. This is time consuming unless you're gonna make puff pastry and freeze it. Now that I know how to make puff pastry and I'm a purist, I'm not gonna buy it. So if you buy puff pastry, this is super easy. The Frangipane is really simple. It's just like grinding stuff up in the food processor. It does all the work for you, and it cooks in the oven. So super easy. If you're gonna make the puff pastry, make it in advance, maybe freeze it. It was a big undertaking. I felt like I should do it all in such a short amount of time, but highly recommend this recipe. As I said, not the most beautiful bake I've ever made, but I will be putting this on tables going forward. And although I love putting something down where everyone's like, wow, it's gorgeous, and this is pretty, I don't mean to speak negatively about it, but it's not like one of my 3-tiered cakes. I just feel like this knocks all of them out of the park. To me, a buttery, flaky pastry is better than a cake any day. So I highly recommend this recipe. I'm so glad I kind of picked it up on a whim, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. So if you like these types of videos, let me know. Please like, subscribe, and I'll be making more in the future. Thanks so much. Bye.
My darling, I love you, 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 I love you.